Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Highly Unlikely with Josh and Jenaye, and today our friend Galen Woodward. And we're so glad that you're joining us wherever you're joining us from today. And I have been looking forward to this conversation a lot. I think we're going to learn some stuff, and just so glad that Galen is here. And Galen, I would love for you to just introduce yourself to everybody and tell them about your family specifically.
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, it's great being with you guys today. But Kay and I, we got married 43 years ago, and she was 19, I was 23. We met at Southwestern Assemblies of God University. And so I was a senior, she was a freshman. We decided to get married, and we were looking for our first ministry opportunity. And the only thing that came up was Albuquerque, New Mexico. And neither one of us wanted to go there. But it's a little small church, and they had 7 teenagers, and they were looking for a youth pastor for the first time to pay full time. And so they hired us, and it was youth pastor / janitor. So that's how we started.
Yes.
And so it was kind of like at the end of the world for her, and she went kicking and screaming and did not want to go. And I promised her, I said, Kay, we'll stay 1 year and then we'll move on. And we're still there after all these years. So I lied to her. But we raised our 3 kids there. We have 3 boys, Dustin, Jonathan, Brandon. And it has just been a thrill to be able to raise them in one place and where they have just flourished and done so well. Dustin just made the transition as a lead pastor at our church 3 years ago, and then I moved to the position of oversight pastor. And then Jonathan, he is a pharmacist, and he's very involved in the church and on our church board. And then Brandon, our youngest, he was on our staff for about 9 years, and he was over our youth and young adults, and then he just planted a church in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago.
Wow.
And so, and now we have 9 grandkids.
Amazing.
And so that's a full-time job.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And Dustin and Brandon have both been here, I think, or just Dustin? I can't remember.
They both have been here.
They've both been here.
Yes,
I thought so.
yes.
Okay. For our young adult conferences.
I feel like, did they travel together maybe? Or
No, it's
came
different
separately?
years, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was different
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So, man,
That's so
love
cool.
them.
And they loved being here. They, you know, they were very excited for me to come and be with you guys. And,
Yeah.
But they
Seriously.
loved it.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, we're going to draw a question
Yes.
just to get to know you on a different level.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Oh, do you prefer to stay in or go out? That's a good question.
I prefer to go out. Always.
What about Kay?
Go out. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That is
I get
awesome.
stir crazy just
Yeah.
being in. You know, what about you guys?
I would say I probably would go out, but you're more of a stay in.
Well, I feel like if pretend we didn't have little kids,
Yeah, we
we'd
have 3
probably say go
anchors
out.
that anchor us at home.
So I do love being at home though. Like I am a homebody. Like during quarantine, did not bother me. I was like,
it does change though
fine.
with the stage of life you're in.
Yeah,
Yes.
You know, I think there was a time that I would have said stay in because I
Yeah.
was just so exhausted.
Yes.
You know, now, you know, I'm looking forward to getting out and going and
Yes.
doing something.
yeah.
I love that.
Every Thursday night we get out on
We
date
do.
night. It's like, and
we
we,
don't
do
even
look
know what we're
forward to
going to
it.
do when we get out.
We're
when we
just
get out.
like, we need out.
Yeah.
Get out.
I am so impressed when people do that. You know, that you're that consistent and you can pull that off.
Not
Wow.
till 2021. So it's very recent.
we were not consistent for a long time.
And then 2021, that was our only goal. The whole year was consistent date nights. And then it just stuck.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's our going out.
Well, that's a good going out.
It
Yeah,
is. It's fun.
It's fun. It's
Yeah.
good. I am so excited that you're here, and there's just a few things that, like, you literally wrote the book on parenting, so I'm excited to talk about that. But also, like, your son wrote the foreword, which I think is so powerful, you know, and affirming everything that you said, and then also like leading a church for a long period of time, and then handing it off really well, and the church, like, from an outside looking in, it looks like it just shifted in a healthy way during that transition and continued to just. I think they changed the name but did a few
Right,
things,
right.
but seems like it's just continuing to thrive under Dustin's leadership. And I'm excited to talk to you because you're seasoned in so many things, you know, leadership and parenting and grandparenting. And I think there's just so much to glean from. So
Yeah.
thank you for coming to North Dakota. I know there's no direct flight from Albuquerque. I'm sure of that.
There's not.
Nope, not many anywhere.
No.
Yeah. So what inspired the book? Like, when did you think I should write a book about what I've learned?
Okay, there is a statistic that has haunted me for 30 years. And I have followed this statistic all those years. And I've watched it grow from 60 to 65. Now it's 70. And the statistic, and you guys have probably heard this, but our church kids that grow up in church, my kids, your kids, the kids that are here every Sunday, they're involved in our youth ministry. What the statistic is that they go all the way through their 18th year. They graduate from high school. They go to a secular university. 70% of our church kids walk away from God, walk away from the church.
Yeah.
And this thing has bothered me for years, thinking, what are we doing wrong? We're losing the battle on this.
Yeah.
And that should never, ever, ever happen. And so when I wrote this book, it's not just about parenting, but I wrote it in a way of where we've got to stop thinking, I'm going to raise kids, but we're going to raise leaders in our home. And I think that there is a real turning point. There is a leadership crisis. We see it everywhere in our nation. And we're not raising up leaders like we need to and being really intentional. So I worked very hard on trying to set that in the book and helping parents to see the vision that kind of put in their back pocket, and they're always reminded, I'm going to raise leaders that are going to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, so take us on a journey through the book. I mean, just talking.
Maybe say what the name of the book is for those listening.
Yeah, it's called A Matter of Time.
There you go.
There it is, if you're watching on YouTube. But take us on a journey through where you started, what you covered, and what people can expect if they pick this up.
One of the things that I focused on, there are 5 character traits that I identified that I really believe that if a parent can implement these 5 character traits into their children, when they're 18, they can walk away, and there's not a university, there's not a professor that could sway them away from their faith. And so the 5 that I have put in here, it's confidence, it's honor, integrity, courage, and vision, which is being a visionary. And those are the 5 things, and I attached a Bible story to each one of those. So the concept of this is that parents would memorize 5 biblical stories. And when your kids are young, sitting down on the side of the bed with them and telling them one of these stories, or when they're 15, driving around in the car and again, reflecting back on these stories and talking about them constantly, and just instilling these 4 or these 5 things into their lives. And I really believe that that's what creates a leader. And so, so I was very excited about putting all of that together and really kind of experimented with my kids along some of those lines.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's so cool. I feel like you're loaded with questions.
Well, no,
keep going.
So 5 characteristics. And so I hear something like vision, and people might say, well, I'm not a visionary. But these 5 apply to anybody. Like anybody can put this into practice with their kids.
Yeah. And, again, like whenever you're thinking about it, when your kids are 2 and 3 and 4, they love stories. Well, you're going to design that story for a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
But it's going to look a whole lot different when they're 18 years old. And as that parent begins to develop more and more in this story, it just keeps broadening out, and where it really has an effect. What this is, it's putting the Word of God in their heart. That's what it is. It's not just a story from the Bible.
Yeah.
It's the Word of God, and it's alive, and it comes alive inside of them. And so, you think about each of these stories, and I jotted these down. Confidence, it talks about the story of Moses. Honor is Mephibosheth. Integrity is Esau. Courage is David. Being a visionary was Nehemiah. And so these kids have these stories that are burned into their memory, and they carry them with them.
Yeah.
And I think that can make a difference.
Yeah. That's amazing.
We were just talking to a group of leaders at our church today about, like from a young age, somebody put the Word of God into my heart. When I was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, those formative years. And I stand on that foundation still today. I preach and I use verses that I memorized when I was that age, and just how important that foundation of the Word is in the life of kids. And then we believe that then once they're in middle school and high school, teaching them how to be missional with that faith, so build the foundation and then teach them how to be missional. And then if they can do that in elementary, middle school, and high school, they can stand, like you're talking about, once they're out of high school education when they go to college, So I love that. And just that foundation of the Word. There was one part I think I listened to you preach a message about this too, but it talks about the stages of parenting, and maybe it's relevant to us because we have a 7, a 5, and a 2-year-old, and we're like, how do we manage these folks?
Yeah.
And just realizing, even as I heard you talk about that, okay, they're in different stages, and they need different things from us.
Right.
So I don't know if you're able to just pull that off the top of your head, or can you talk through those stages and how to handle your kids differently?
Whatever you think about the 4 stages, what this does is it gives you a 30,000-foot view. It backs you up, and now you're looking at raising your kids from 0 to 18, and then you'll find the 4 roles that you have to play as a parent. And so whenever you're thinking about that, the first one is commander. That's the role from 0 through 6 or through 5. And you're a commander in chief. And the reason why I put commander is that at that stage, you're doing everything for them. I mean, it's, rocking them in the middle of the night, giving them a bottle, changing their diaper as they get a little bit older, telling them what to wear, what to eat. You're not going to get a dessert unless you eat this. I mean, you're telling them every single thing to do. And so that's the stage of that 1 through 5. And we were talking about how busy life is with kids. They never run down. I mean, they're like the Energizer bunny, and by the evening, you wish you could take the batteries out of them.
Yes.
They're just going and going and going.
Yeah.
And so it does wear you out. But the commander is where you are taking charge of all of their lives, and just it's a great stage. Now, it's a hard stage, but it's a great stage. And a lot of times, people will say to me, what was your favorite stage of parenting? And it's hard for me to say that because I enjoyed every stage. In fact, I love the stage that I'm in right now. But there is nothing like a 2, a 3, a 4-year-old. You will never be loved in your life by anyone like a 2 or a 3 or 4-year-old. And I've watched our kids grow out of that stage, and then now our grandkids are growing out of that stage. And it makes me so sad because I love that, and so we have to really cherish that. But I think also that in this commander stage, we're in charge of everything. It's tough. And when I say tough, more divorces take place during this period of time than any other time in marriage. And the reason why is because, it was all about them when they were single. Now they're married. Now they have kids. Life is no longer about them. It's about the spouse. It's about the kids. And they long for what they used to have, and the romance and the candles and the music. And now that's been traded for dirty diapers and bottles. And they just feel like they're losing life, and they fantasize for something else, and then they bolt and divorce takes place. But I always try to tell people this season will pass. I mean, there's beauty in it, but there's also great difficulty. This season will pass. But again, you want to slow down long enough to realize that you don't want it to pass that fast.
Yeah.
And let me just throw this in real quick. I was at the park with 2 of our granddaughters, Lucy and Aslan. And at the time, they were about 4 or 5 years old. And at the park, they had these big trees, but they were really great to climb in. They were low, the branches, they climbed and climbed and climbed. And so when we were done, I was holding Lucy's hand on my right and Aslan's hand on the left, and we were walking away from the park. And Lucy looked up at me and she said, "Pop, this was the greatest day of my life." And as I'm walking, I'm thinking, climbing trees is the greatest day of your life? And then I have to remember every day is something new for them.
Yeah.
They're experiencing life for the very first time. And we need to slow down long enough to enjoy that with them and realizing and seeing life through their eyes of freshness and newness.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's beautiful.
That's so powerful.
We have a 2-year-old, and I know that this is our last little one, and I'm just hanging out for dear life to these moments with her at that age.
So true.
So you just painted that picture in a great way.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, then we go from commander to the next one, and it's personal trainer. And personal trainer is the ages of 6 through 12. And so this is a little overwhelming at times, but you're thinking, okay, personal trainer, I've got to train them ethically, morally, biblically, spiritually, socially, and you start thinking, oh my word, how am I going to do that effectively when maybe both parents work and you've got work and you've got all the activities and you've got church and you've got sports and now you've got to add all of these things. And what I try to tell parents a lot of times is just make everything easy. Slow down and make it easy. Don't make it hard. Because when you're thinking about training them, the most effective way that anyone could ever train is by the lifestyle that you live. And you're just, you're teaching them by how you treat your spouse, by the tone of the voice that you use, by your consistency at church, your generosity, your kindness, your love. I mean, you're teaching all the time. And if you're aware of that, then it really helps us. And that's how we teach, is by the life that we live in and showing that to them.
Oh, yeah. I'm just learning. I don't even have any follow-up questions.
I know.
I'm just
Me too.
taking it in. So good.
Another thing that I think that maybe I can throw in here is there was a seminar that I went to early on, and I was pretty young, a young parent. This had nothing to do with parenting, but it was the power of 5 minutes. And that was more in leadership and business and that kind of thing. I took that and I adapted that into my life when my kids were real young. And guys, this was one of the most powerful things I think I ever did, was that every day, and I tried to every single day, take 5 minutes with each of the 3 boys, and then I would plop down on the couch. And, for us, today we didn't have phones then, but don't take your phone, leave your phone, but you're plopping down on the couch and just putting your arm around them and say, hey, tell me about your day, and where you're spending 5 minutes just eye to eye, just in their world and hearing what they have to say. 5 minutes doesn't sound very, very like much, but that 5 minutes of one-on-one attention was crazy effective. And where they open up, sometimes they don't want to talk, sometimes they do talk, sometimes they start crying. There are things that are happening at school. You can enter into their world in those 5 minutes. And I'm telling you, that was one of the best things that I ever did. And it really helped me to understand where they are and where I could invest and where I could really help them.
Yeah, I heard a statistic a long time ago that dads spend 8 minutes a day with their kids in intentional time, and maybe it's less than that now. But I think about that like every day. How do I just have that intentional time or ask them questions, and a little convicted too about some moments when I miss it. But I love that.
Well, we all do, know, and life is so busy that a day can go by and you can think, wow, I hardly spent any time with them at all. And you do feel guilty over that.
Like because, intentional time. I think I can be around them for a whole day, but I wasn't intentional, like you said, eye to eye. And it's just such a great reminder for us to have multiple kids to just take the 5 minutes with one. Not, I'm with all of you and it counts for all of you, but intentionally talking to one child.
Whenever it comes to this training stage, being a personal trainer, let me throw this in too. I know for our church and I know for your church that there is a high emphasis on the young and youth ministry. Raising our 3 boys, and Kay and I have been on the stage in our auditorium many times making this statement. We are so grateful for paid staff, youth pastors, and volunteers that loved our kids. And we're so grateful that they helped us really raise them and invest in them, where people loved them, talked to them, mentored them. I don't know how you raise kids today without the support of the church, a strong youth ministry that comes in around them. I mean, it makes all of the difference. I mean, it's gigantic.
Yep.
Yeah, that's huge.
Okay, tell us about teenagers. I think that's next, right? 13.
It is. It's 12 to 18. It's the counselor stage. So we moved from the personal trainer to counselor. Personal trainer is where you have set the standard. You've set everything, the foundation of everything that you want to teach them. And now from 12 to 18, they're going to live that out. And so now you become a counselor during this stage. And one of the biggest things with teenagers is that you're trying to help them go from dependence to independence. And I've always said that 15, 16-year-olds are like wild stallions. Man, they're chomping at the bits. They're ready to go. They're ready to race. They feel like they're as mature as they will ever be.
Yeah.
And they want you to turn them loose and let them make their own decisions. And there's a balance here because our job is to help them move from being dependent upon us to being independent by the time they leave our house. And it's a hard balance to try to figure all of that out. How much freedom do I give to them? And so it's a little challenging.
This is kind of a different question, but how did you guys, when you're raising your kids and being this intentional, how did you and Kay always make sure that it wasn't child-centered parenting, that you were focused on each other? You know what I'm...
Keep each other the priority?
Yeah, because I just see that a lot where even parents who bring their kids into church service and they're just so enamored with their kid, they're not seeing anything else going on, or spouses who are focused on their kids and they lose sight of each other. Did you guys have any practices or any thoughts about how you kept that straight?
I think for us it was fairly easy to keep that straight, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's overprotective. It's every focus is on them. I think it's where people struggle if they don't have a really strong marriage, or they allow kids to kind of separate them a little bit, where the love centers more on the kids than it does on them.
Exactly.
And so we were real intentional on keeping that balance and keeping a very healthy relationship with Kay and I. One of the things that during this stage was the most important thing that we ever did. Kay, and she was kind of the glue to all of this, but she made sure that 3 times a week that we had a dinner together, that everyone knew that they were there for those dinners. They knew the day that it was happening. Our kids were extremely active in sports. They played every sport that has ever been invented. and so we were extremely busy. But we also set that standard of where we would come and eat together. And that was a time, where Kay and I could pour into them. And it was that bonding time. And we made this a rule that at dinner time, when you sit at the table, that we would never, ever correct our children. We wouldn't get on grades or what they did wrong, or, making it a time around the table of we're getting on to them. We made that rule. That's not the place. The place will be afterwards or before, but not during that time. We wanted dinner to be a place that was joy, it was laughter, they looked forward to it, they could bring their friends to it. And that was one of the greatest things. In fact, all these years later, we still do that every Monday night. A gigantic meal that Kay cooks, and all 17 come. We're all there every single Monday night.
Wow.
We just did it this last Monday night. I mean, without fail, every Monday night.
That's beautiful.
And so it's been a real great tradition, but it's like the glue that sticks us all together.
Yeah. I'm being so challenged and encouraged in a good way. Yeah.
Is there one more stage?
Yeah. Then there's the last one is the consultant stage, and this is after 18. And so your kids are college age. They maybe they're getting married, or they're leaving and going to an apartment, but they're leaving the house. This was very tough for us.
Yeah.
We loved our kids. We loved the activities, and I can remember Brandon, our youngest, in the last football game that we were attending. And now the other 2 had already gone off to college, and the depression that set in that I will never go to another game with my kids. And I wasn't ready for that stage to be over. I mean, it was hard for us to let each of our kids go, but also the thrill of watching them succeed and do well in life. So this last stage, the consultant stage, you have to stop being a parent at that time. And what I like to say is you shift from parent to friend. And what you're wanting now to be the best friends that you could ever possibly be. Think about this for a moment. You're a parent for 18 years, but now you're going to be best friends with your kids for the next 40 years. And so, and a lot of parents never, ever think about that.
Yeah.
That when they're younger, you're preparing for later. And, you're parenting here, And at the same time, you always hear, I'm not your friend, I'm your parent. Well, that's true. But also, you want those kids while you're parenting to say, my dad is my best friend, or my mom is my best friend. You want that. And so you're cultivating that in those 18 years.
Yeah.
But when they are off on their own, what's so sad for me, and I just had this conversation last week with a lady that is a godly lady, a great lady, has been in church many, many years, and she has a horrible relationship with her adult children. And her, listening to her talk about it, I mean, it just makes you so sad. And there's reasons why. Because a lot of times parents will continue to be parents, and they're constantly telling their adult children what they should do and shouldn't do and in their business, and you should do this different with your kids. And you can't do that. You cannot do that. You have to back off. You did everything you could do in 18 years. Now your role, be a grandparent and be the best grandparent the world has ever known. You get in there and help them, support them, love them, but they don't need criticizing. They don't need you to give them all of your ideas. But the consultant role is when they need you, they'll ask. And then you can sit down and calmly and wisely talk to them about the issues they're going through and offering help to them and support to them. What you're wanting is your adult children to know that you're a great friend and you're full of wisdom, that you never get condemnation from them. It's just support and love. And so that consultant stage is really, really important.
Wow. You remind me a lot of the Intentional Parenting podcast. It's the Comer family on it together. Yes. And I was just listening to them the other day about just grandparent dynamics. And for the first time ever, they were talking about how they have relationship with their grandkids. And they said, we believe it's never the grandparents' role to rebuke and correct. It's always to encourage. And I was like, I have never heard that. And even, I wonder how many people haven't heard what you just said about a relationship with your adult children. I would say that has been a consistent one-on-one meeting in ministry of people. How do I do this? And why can't I be close with my adult children? And would you say that's the hardest phase for people to grapple with, is the consultant phase? I
think it is. I really do. And it's really shocking to me to see how many parents who have adult children and there are strained relationships. And I think it just goes back to common sense. It comes back to self-awareness that they don't even know what they're doing. I mean, it's just, they're just kind of on their heels. I mean, when I'm with my kids, what I could say to them, my adult kids, I could say, Brandon, there are French fries all over your car. I mean, there are chicken nuggets under the seats, and your car is an absolute wreck. And
sounds familiar.
And you just go down that path, and you think, why would you ever go down that path? Right. Why would you ever do that?
Like, where's that going?
Or you could say, hey, Brandon, would you mind if I took your car and could I just take it to the down here and get it cleaned out for you? And man, I'd love to do that, because I remember what it was like when we had kids, and our car was a mess all the time. And just reverse things like 100%. that, where you become this great help, and they're looking at you like, how do we do life without them?
Yeah.
That's what I want to be, that type of person.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
We're in that season, and it's like, yes, amen, 100%.
All I keep thinking is 2024, we got to get Galen and Kay back here, and we got to do something for parents, because this is just so rich.
Gold. It
is
so
good.
Yes.
I think I wanted to ask you a question about thriving in your relationships with your adult children. Like, what are a couple things you would say to someone? And you've kind of answered this, but I don't know if you had other thoughts of who wants to have a great relationship with their grown children.
Yeah.
It goes back to you need to understand your role. And I think that's where it's blurry. I think there are so many parents, we've done this for 18 years, and then we just keep on doing it.
Yeah.
Understand your role. In Genesis 2, Ephesians chapter 5, it talks about when a man leaves his father and mother, he leaves, and then he cleaves to his wife, and they start their own life. And that's where, we've got to back off, and realize I'm no longer a parent. And I think a lot of people think that's wrong, that I've got to keep parenting and I got to keep everything on track. And that's not true. It's where they're adults, they're going to make mistakes. You hate for them to make mistakes, but let them do it. But the flip side of that, if there is, as a consultant, in that role, if they're headed down a dangerous path, then there's always a place to sit down and love and confront them. I mean, there's a place, but that's rare. That's a rare thing. Again, it's just understanding the role. It's having self-awareness. Do I know what I'm doing? Do I know what I'm saying? Do I know that I'm overbearing? And I don't think a lot of people do. I don't think they stop long enough to really think through that. And so if you're always giving advice to your grown kids, they will resent that.
I was just going to ask, what are the repercussions when you take those, the 4, did you say phases or stages? Stages, and you try to extend one into an age that you're not supposed to. So let's say you're trying to be the commander. I think of our 7-year-old, where I still sometimes am trying to be the commander in his life, and I think I can conclude right now my own, consequences and repercussions from that. But in general, you just said your kids will resent you. What is the general repercussions if you extend it?
Absolutely. There is this kind of this drifting from those. And a lot of times it's by also your child and how they're developing. And so certainly it can kind of drift, but you don't want to carry it too far either.
Right.
So it's just kind of watching your kids. We have a 9-year-old granddaughter. Whenever Kay and I are with her, it's like sitting down with an adult. It's the craziest thing. Kay told me the other day, she said, Aslan's 9 years old and she's my best friend in the whole world. When she goes and sits down at a restaurant and it's an adult conversation. Well, another 9-year-old is not going to be that way at all.
Right.
And so it's just kind of, you're having to balance it by who they are as children, but it will overlap some.
Yeah,
I'm kind of just realizing that our 5-year-old is like in that stage of transition between like commander to now where she's asking different questions or thoughts, where it really is like training her about what is right, and what is appropriate.
But I love with that, the kids naturally are going to grow and change, but who actually has to change how we do things is us. Like as parents, it's on us. And I think that's probably what I don't see in a lot of one-on-ones or meetings about this, is usually it's like the kid's fault, where as parents though, would you say, no, it's on you, like to take responsibility of either how you're training them or your oversight, rather than saying it's your child's fault? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Clarify that just for a second again. So it's, say that just the end of that.
Yeah. So like your kids will grow through these phases no matter what.
Yeah.
But you are the one that has to change. And so my assumption is that parents don't take their responsibility and blame the kids. But is there, what was I kind of asking?
Well, I think you're saying like a child is naturally going to grow.
Yeah.
So they're naturally going to come into these phases, but a parent,
you have to be intentional.
At every stage, it's really on them.
It is.
To intentionally shift.
And if you're not aware of stages, or you're not aware that you have to change your role, you can parent the same way from the very beginning all the way through 18.
Yeah.
And it can be really disastrous.
Yeah.
Because what that becomes is nitpicking the whole time, that you're just on them every single day about every single little thing. And that starts wearing on kids. And that's why it's important to understand that, yes, my role is going to change.
Yeah.
And as these kids grow older, and I've got to really understand that I've got to tweak some of the things that I'm doing, and giving them a little more room to grow, a little more room, to expand. For instance, when we're talking about going from dependence to independence, you've got to be really careful with that. But one of the things that I found myself doing was asking them questions, at 15, 16, and saying, do you think this friend of yours is really the type of person you ought to be hanging out with? Or how late do you think you ought to hang out tonight? What time do you think you should come home? Well, I'm not asking that question that they can tell me what they're going to do. I'm asking that question to determine their level of maturity, because their answer is going to tell you a whole lot. And you're going to know they are not ready at all, they're really starting to get this, and you give them a little more leeway and a little more leeway, as they grow.
Yeah. And I think for us, I know we've had to let go of that, where identity comes from our kids doing well or succeeding, or if they fail. Because then I think you just grip on so tight if you're like, but I don't want them to fail because I then look like or feel like a failure. So I think that's a really hard thing for parents to get over too. I remember a teaching by Francis Chan on parenting when Avery, our oldest, was like a baby. And he said when they're young, you start with your fist like this. And by the time they're 18, your hand better be like this. And that is how we have.
Wow.
And that's been, so I'm like, right now we're like here, but it's so easy to want to grip back.
Yes, it is.
And when they struggle or maybe, don't have the maturity there, but you let them try make decisions and there might be failure. How as a parent, how did you handle that? Like failure, or if not failure, if your kids missed the mark or, lied or broke the rules. How did you handle that as a parent?
Always dealing with it, always sitting down, trying to do it in an extreme calm way, of just saying, hey, let's talk about this. You lied, and I mean, it was a right out lie. And so let's talk about where this went wrong. Why did you do this? And one of the things that I wrote about in the book, and it probably sounds worse than what it really is, but we were landscaping in our backyard at the time when our kids were, middle school, high school, and whenever they were really out of line, I would say, okay, I'm sending you to the rock pile, where they had a wheelbarrow and they would shovel rock and we were landscaping. Yeah. But I always said that work really helps them think through their wrong doings. And a lot of times you can go and put them in the room and you're grounded and you're going to sit in your room for the next 3 hours. And if you do that, they're in there sulling and getting angry and madder, or they can go out and do work. I mean, and not overdo it, but where they're working and it feels like the energy's pouring out of them. They're able to think through what they were doing. Wow. And so we really kind of made that a fun thing in our family, but it was really effective. I just have never liked sending kids to their room and shutting their door, and there they are by themselves, and so I think there's better ways of doing that.
Yeah. Wow. Like it takes far less intentionality to send them to their rooms. Everything you're talking about boils down to, I always think of the verse of like, do not grow weary, where it's like, get up off the couch one more time. Like, do not grow weary of correcting or, coaching.
Well, it's something Dustin wrote in your foreword, which was Dad was like the most present person. He has a gift of being present, like wherever he is. Right. And it's choosing to be present, rather than like being checked out or not wanting to deal with it, which we get it. Like we're tired, through.
Even last week I said, babe, I don't have the energy to facility this right now.
And that's right. It's a team, like I'm
that's real life. I mean, that really is. Yeah. When our kids were in high school, that's when our church, had gone into this real big growth spurt, and life was so busy. But I had an assistant, and I worked really hard with her on scheduling, and that every day, every single day, 5 days a week, I was at the football field at 4:00, watching practice, being with my kids, being there, not just games, but practices. And I really tried to be very, very present, where when they looked up on the hill, there I was every single day, cheering them on. And I loved that. But it's real easy to get too busy in life, and I've got too many things to do and too many people to see, but it's really scheduling and getting other people to help you and support you in that, and making that time valuable. That's one of the things that I look back on, and I am so happy about that I did that, because I know it made such a huge impression. But there are other things that I look back on and you have regrets and you just think, oh, I wish I could do that over again.
Right.
And so that's why I enjoy grandparenting, because what I didn't do well, I'm trying to do well this time.
That's so great.
And I'm really enjoying that.
That's awesome. Well, I think that I'm jumping to a different thing, unless you want to.
Well, I'm going to ask another question about like parenting with adult children.
Yeah.
And just the holidays.
Oh, I was going to ask the holidays, because we're going to launch this around the holiday season, and we wanted to have a conversation because that's usually a lot of things that we hear is conflict around holidays, or kids that don't love holidays because there's a lot of pressure. And so,
let me just put it to you this way. People who have moved to North Dakota have said it's hard to make friends here because people are so entrenched in their family unit or their family of origin. And so it runs strong here in the communities. And a lot of people are related, and, navigating the holidays.
There's a lot of family duty.
Or trying to step out from that is really difficult.
It is gigantic. Yeah. I mean, it is so big. I have never thought of this in my life until we got hit with it. Mm. So, we're raising our kids. We have Thanksgiving holiday traditions. We have Christmas traditions. So you think about a tradition, a family tradition, whatever you do, that's what's right. And that's just normal. Yeah. And then your kids get married and they marry someone who has a different tradition. And so Jonathan, he marries Jess. They always opened their gifts on Christmas Eve. We always opened our gifts on Christmas morning. Yeah. It was bizarre to us to think you would open them on Christmas Eve, and it was bizarre to them to think y'all get up on Christmas morning and do that. And so it was like this conflict. And then Dustin, who's been with us, every Christmas, and man, we love that tradition, everybody together. And now all of a sudden, they've got their tradition, and Mandy's tradition, who married Dustin, is that they meet in Kentucky at their grandparents' house every Christmas or the day after Christmas for this gigantic family gathering. That's like 75 people. So it disrupted our whole thing because now we had to open up gifts early Christmas morning. I mean, really early. They open up, they run out the door, jump on an airplane, fly to Kentucky so they can be there the next day for their family thing. And Kay and I were looking at each other like, this just messed up our whole tradition, and so Jonathan's going that way, and Brandon's going that way, and Dustin's going that way, and this is where the tension really is strong, is that you want to start manipulating this and saying, well, we're going to switch some things here, and we want you with us, and they're saying the same thing, and it really can become war between families. And this is where you have to let down all of your feelings and realize this is the new world we're living in, and we're going to accept this, and we'll just have to figure it out. But we're not going to argue, and we're not going to get all worked up, and we're not going to get mad at that family or that family because they've taken this away from us. And that's a real big deal that a lot of families are fighting through. Yeah. And a lot of families don't handle that well.
Well, and then the kids get tired of it and boycott.
That's what happens. That is exactly it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how did you guys navigate it? How did you figure it out?
By just not making an issue about it. It stings. It kind of hurts. You have to rearrange. Sometimes you feel like you're second fiddle, that this family over here is getting the priority. Whatever the feeling is, don't say anything to your kids. Just don't make it an issue. Because if you go to them and you start complaining and you're saying that this isn't right and this isn't right, you're putting them in the middle of all of this, and frustration builds. And you're absolutely right. They'll boycott. They'll just say, well, this, we're just not going to do anything, and we just won't be with you guys this year. It's just calm and just deal with it, live with it. What comes, and just be loving and kind. And if you are loving and kind, it'll all circle back around. It always does.
Yeah.
And I think in this whole conversation, you've just driven home this point that there is a flashing sign when a child turns 18 and maybe moves out of the home that parents have to see and realize the relationship just changed and I have to pivot. Because I think everything you talked about, even about like being the consultant, and if there's a time where you have to correct your adult child, it's as a friend, right? It's and that's biblical. There's something healthy about a friend calls, but if you don't have that relationship built as a friendship, it's going to come across very different, and even getting together on the holidays, it's viewing it as friendship rather than trying to keep the family tradition. And my heart goes out to parents too, because a lot of grandparents, they have maybe more space to host everybody than they've ever had. They have more free time to host. They have more resource to put the meal together. Like, but then the earlier years too. And so they desire that, but it is such a tension for families.
It is. Yeah. So a lot of families battle that, and a lot of families handle that very poorly. They do not do well. And once it starts going down the wrong side, it really, really brings pain into those relationships. A lot of times they never recover.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so hard. I know that's been a tension for us around the holidays, just when you're in ministry. And I always say, when everyone gets time off is usually our busiest seasons, like Easter and Mother's Day and Christmas. And I know that's for us too, where sometimes traveling with young kids just stinks. I always say, some people are graced to do it, and I don't believe that I was given that grace. So even I'm like, too,
Me either.
right? Like coming to terms with who you are. And it's like, because we looked at ourselves after kind of running ragged to see all family, and we'd be snippy at each other on the drive home. And then we were like, this isn't us. Like, this isn't our family. Like, not our dynamics. And so then for us, it was that whole boundary conversation of just to keep boundaries, just to make sure that we keep us well, not to push anyone out. But, and so we've had to navigate that too. And there's,
going back to the Christmas thing, the holidays, it's, you have this tradition again of everyone coming and gathering around the tree and opening up gifts. But when they get married and they have their own kids, as grandparents, we still want everyone to come to our house and do that. But they may want to have Christmas with just their family.
Yeah, like you guys started your tradition at some point with your boys.
Right. And so that's where grandparents have to really have great understanding and get a hold of their feelings and realize, wait a minute, we did that and we enjoyed it just being with our family, and we need to give them the space to do that. And again, with no manipulation involved in that, just let them do that. And then afterwards come over to our house. And so you just got to be, just again, common sense, be aware, and just know that whatever, all we're trying to do is just make sure there's peace in this family and no issues. Just there's no point.
Yeah.
No point to pick a fight.
Yeah.
Does it, is it sweet to get to that season where it's you and Kay? It might be you and Kay on a holiday, and you get to look at your best friend and be like, hey, it's just us. Like, what's that like?
That sounds good, but no. That sounds so mushy and good, honesty. But no. It would be looking at each other like, this is the pit. It's just the two of us.
We're the other 15 people
It's just us, and so, we're kind of like these party animals. We just want to be in the middle of everything, and so no, that does not work for us.
I love that.
I love your honesty. That's what we've always said is like, oh man, when our kids grow out of the house, it'll just be us. How sweet will that be? But it's probably because we're in the thick of it right now.
It's good for a short time.
Yeah.
A short time. Yeah.
I heard somebody say, once you have kids, it just changes how you think forever because they're a part of you.
Yes.
So you don't ever go a day without thinking about them.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether it's how they're sleeping, are they safe when they're young, to older and just caring about their lives. And so, I can see where just being the two of you, you're like, where's the rest of our party?
Yeah.
The rest of our people.
Someone asked me a while back, they said, what is the greatest success in your life? And it was kind of coming from the church angle, and my answer was not along the church lines, and I really, really mean this. My greatest success, my greatest joy is to be able to say, my 3 best friends in the world are my 3 sons. And I love that. I love where we are. I call each one of them my best friend. And so life can't get better than that when you have that kind of relationship. And that's where you guys are headed with your kids. And it's just having that foresight that's where I'm headed. That's, and that's what we're going to make happen.
Yeah.
And that's what, at my stage of life, what makes life rich and valuable is that.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing. Sorry.
I might have a last thing too. I know we're pushing it on time. But it's so rich.
I know. I'm like, we could split it to a part 2 of just the holiday conversation. But what would you say to someone that's in your season of life? Their kids are grown adults, and they didn't build that foundation from 0 to 18 or 0 to 25 of friendship, but they're like, oh, I want that. I want to call them my best friend.
And maybe they're having an aha moment
but
right now.
now is the revelation, and they're, same season as you. What would you say to them?
I've talked to so many people in my age bracket, heartbroken, and what I tell them, it's never too late.
Right.
It's never too late. You just start loving, and that's what they need. It's where you see where the fault has been, and that you just say, from now on, I'm just going to bless, be kind. Like I said a few moments ago, I'm going to be the best grandparent that there has ever been. Whatever they need, support, love, and you can rebuild any relationship. And I wish that I had time to tell you one of the stories of an 80-year-old man in our church that had a horrible relationship with his family, and it was restored.
Wow.
After his wife died. A remarkable story, but it happened for him. And it could happen for anyone.
Yeah.
But it's where you just become, you know what it is? It's being Christ.
Right.
It's just being Jesus. That's what it is. It's just kind, you're considerate, you're loving. Or if you want a list to go by, then it's just the fruit of the Spirit.
Right. Yeah.
That is exactly what it is. And if you want to restore a relationship, write those 9 words down and live by those words when you're working on that relationship, and it will bring healing.
Wow.
That's so powerful.
Okay, I get my final question.
Sorry, I want to say one last thing before
Okay, go ahead.
When you said being the best grandparent ever, I thought, yes, which means even inconveniencing yourself to taking your 3 grandkids on a flight that was horrendous.
That is true. That is true.
Whereas sometimes I'm like, that sounds so beautiful, but it's like, it is inconveniencing yourself at times to love them well.
It really is. It is. It's work.
Yeah.
It is hard work.
Yes. So I appreciate that about you. You put your money where your mouth is.
I think you've just hit the target in so many ways and everything you're talking about, but specifically that your kids love you guys, and they love the Lord.
Yeah.
And how is raising kids who love Jesus after high school in our homes, how much is it a feature of you can do the right things to be sure that happens? And how much is it just, because I think sometimes there's this feeling like, well, I can do everything in my power, but they're still going to make their own decision when they're 18, whether they're going to carry on the faith and following Jesus. But how much did you guys build around that so that they would be able to stand once they graduated? Is it a roll of the dice? Everything has to come together, right? Or is it?
It's never roll the dice. This thing is very intentional. I realize that, and it's true, that you can do everything right and still have a rebellious child. Yeah. Jesus had 12 disciples. One was rebellious. Yeah. So it happens. But it's unlikely. If you really set the pace, you're not, it's not legalism. It's not all these rules, but it's an authentic love of God. It's in your home. It's in your marriage. They'll pick up on that. And what you want is when your kids leave your house, and this happened to me. Let me tell you what happened to me, and we'll make this real quick.
You're fine.
When I left at 18 to go off to college, this is a picture that is so vivid that, and I think I'm gonna get choked up thinking about this again. But it was when I was driving away, and my parents were staying out in the driveway. First time I had ever left home, for good, leaving home. And I would never return because I went to college, got married, all of that. But as I'm driving away, I remember looking back and seeing my dad wave. And as he was waving, I turned back and tears just streaming down my face. And I was saying to myself, one day I want to be just like that. And so, I think that if you can get a kid, an 18-year-old kid, to say that about their parents, you've done something really right, that I want to be just like him one day. And so I think that's the goal is that, we're setting the pace that they respect and that they know. There are times that we have to get onto our kids and that's our role, but they always know that we love them more than anything else, and just consistency, in our lives in every area possible.
Yeah.
So, what I'm talking about today is there's so many mess ups. We mess up. It's okay. It's all right. Just get back on track when there's a mess up and just keep on going, and you're going to raise leaders. And that's where we are. We have to raise leaders in this time that we live.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite conversations.
Me too. And I mean, seriously, thank you for just putting so much of this in writing, because people carry the wisdom that you have, but they never do something intentional to really pass it on and cause it to stand. And so this is a gift, to people like us. And thank you for the intentionality of doing it. And I'm going to listen to this podcast probably 6 times. There's so much good stuff.
He's going to drill you at dinner today.
All these questions. So.
In a good way.
Good.
Yeah. Hey, we are so grateful that you listened, that you joined us today too, and so thankful for this conversation. And so usually we say, if somebody will benefit from this conversation, share it. But we know everyone will benefit from this conversation. So share it. Let somebody know about it.
Yeah.
You can subscribe if you want to hear future episodes. And thanks for being here and for joining us.